By late 1964, Chevrolet was designing their answer to the infamous Ford Mustang. This process began with the XP836 design study that would produce scale models that didn't run out of artistic materials such as clay.
Two-dimensional drawings must be translated into three-dimensional clay models. In the case of the XP836, it is decided to go to a full-size clay mock-up.
Balsa wood.
While this is going on, mock-ups of parts and components are fitted into a wooden framework of the F-car.
And fiberglass.
Full-scale fiberglass model. It won't run, but it looks enough like the real thing to fool an expert.
When this process was complete in the winter of 1965, the potential drivetrains were tested in Chevy 2 X-Car Novas. At the same time, Fisher Body was creating sheet metal tooling that would utilize sheet metal modeling techniques for the coaches that they would supply to Chevrolet. When these processes were refined and readied for test manufacture, the program was tasked with the hand building of the first working prototypes.
Prototypes that do run are next on the schedule. Time for the showdown.
This process would ultimately create 49 working prototypes for the F-Car manufacturing platform, the first Chevrolet Camaros. These cars would be a landmark achievement and spark the longest and fiercest rivalry to ever come out of Detroit, the Ford Mustang versus the Chevrolet Camaro.
Camaro, the new car that's something else. Something you've never seen before in a driving machine.
N100013, the gear and axle test car, was delivered on May 31st, 1966 as Fisher Body subcontracted coach DD16D. Like all F-Body pilot prototypes at Norwood, it started its hand-built assembly in consecutive VIN number order as the 13th build of the engineering study in a nondescript World War II shipping building at the Norwood, Ohio Chevrolet plant. This facility was chosen because of security and upper management's desire to keep this secret project outside the prying eyes of the public and the press. One of one on Fleet and Special Order 5A-26, made by Manufacturing Gear and Axle. It carried model number 12667. This red-on-black convertible was the fifth pilot prototype convertible ever built. N100013 was hand-built utilizing components marked handmade, pilot, or prototype, and was required to be received by supervisor in charge Claire Caswell at the Milford Proving Grounds by June 14th of 1966 for rigorous gear and axle testing under the auspices of Gear and Axle pilot reliability audits. These reliability audits were done on-site at the Milford Proving Grounds as well as off-site. It was important to keep this prototype testing and audit process under wraps from the prying eyes of the public, because it was ongoing prior to the official announcement of the car to the press. These cars were tested under driving conditions that were very rigorous and extreme, then torn apart and checked for wear and reliability. New or different components were added or substituted, and the process began yet again. The idea was to create real-world conditions that could possibly cause failure.
I think the big thing about the Camaro is its roadability. You feel a real sense of positive control with this car. It does what you want it to, when you want it to.
These weaknesses would affect the bottom line through warranty and quality issues. And these weaknesses were to be dealt with pre-production to the best of their abilities. The off-site reliability audits were conducted during the middle portion of July of 1966. Among notable imperfections gleaned from these audits was the necessity of traction bars on the rear differential and cocktail shakers installed upon the convertibles. General Motors shipping records show number 13 being returned to corporate Zone 0, where it was used as a company promotional vehicle shortly thereafter, before being sold to the first owner in March of 1967. This first owner was Tom Kinkelar, and he purchased the vehicle 10 months after the birth of N100013. As was typical with engineering test cars, the prototype was equipped with a drivetrain that was capable of being warranted via a dealer work order. The original VIN tag was then engraved in the absence of non-existent regular production protector plate. That's where our story takes on a personal flair. Tom Kinkelar would have number 13 serviced locally in Waukegan, Illinois over the years. His personal mechanic, Tom Roos, would jokingly mark the serial number line of his auto repair orders for the car, Abyss. They would become friends, and Roos would purchase the car from Kinkelar on August 28, 2002. Tom Roos would begin the journey to document the car for others' enjoyment almost immediately. He documented the handmade, pilot, and prototype parts, and went to great lengths to save every imaginable piece of the car. This was prior to the creation of Pilot Car Registry, and Tom always struggled to obtain the factory documentation for its provenance, as well as the expert involvement that would prove necessary. Fast forward the clock to March of 2015, when logistics expert and lead archivist of Pilot Car Registry, Miss Jamie Schwartz, obtained an ownership confirmation of N100013 utilizing law enforcement databases. At that point, the founder of Pilot Car Registry, Logan Lawson, enlisted the cooperation of his volunteers and personally verified the prototype in person. Armed with subject matter expertise and vintage photos for presentation to Tom Roos, the two quickly became close friends. This friendship would lead Roos to once say to me, "I want the boy to own the car someday." Unfortunately, Tom was diagnosed with cancer in the summer of 2016. A phone call from his wife, Jackie, ensued, and Tom's desire to pass curatorship to Pilot Car Registry and its youthful founder, Logan Lawson, was accomplished. N100013, the gear and axle prototype, was adoringly loved by two owners before being reunited with its factory provenance and vintage documentation by the organization devoted to the research and curation of this pilot prototype program of General Motors, Pilot Car Registry. It underwent a comprehensive new old stock restoration utilizing only original General Motors parts from the time period, a virtually impossible feat. It stands as one of the most historically significant handful of surviving examples of the F-Car pilot prototype, a car that we all know and love so well today, the Chevrolet Camaro.
On a mountain road where very few can follow, see Camaro climb up to the sky. At home on a quiet street.
Reliability audits as they appear in the F-Car Pilot Book were studies done under driving conditions by the General Motors Engineering Division based out of the Proving Grounds. The pilot prototypes that were used in these audits were number 3, the 250 6-cylinder Power Glide test car, number 4, the 283 8-cylinder test car, number 5, the 230 6-cylinder 3-speed test car, number 10, the V8 smog pump test car, number 11, the Longevity Mule test car, number 13, the gear and axle test car, number 15, the crash safety test car, 16, the 327 Power Glide test car, 18, the 6-cylinder smog pump test car, 25, the 327 3-speed test car, 34, the 6-cylinder Canadian export car, 37, the 350 4-speed test car, number 43, the first pilot line assembly research car, number 46, the V8 Canadian export car. These audits were conducted on-site at the General Motors Proving Grounds as well as off-site. It was important to keep the testing and the audit process under wraps from the general public because it was ongoing prior to the official announcement of the car to the press. The vehicles that stayed on site were all testing vehicles for General Motors Engineering. The supervisor in charge of the process at the Proving Grounds was Claire Caswell. These cars were put through rigorous and extreme driving conditions and then tore apart and checked for wear and reliability. New or different components were added or substituted and the process began again. The idea was to create real-world conditions that could possibly cause failure. These weaknesses would affect the bottom line through warranty and quality issues. These issues were to be dealt with pre-production to the best of their abilities. The pilot prototype vehicles used off-site were thought to be 5, 18, 25, and 37 on the West Coast route, and 13, 34, 43, and 46 on the East Coast route. Through an interview with Paul King, an actual driver of the West Coast route, we were able to discern the necessity of the off-site reliability audits. As the new product neared production, the efforts to camouflage it on test trips tapered off in a last-minute rush to find and fix all remaining problems. He recalls the trip that led to the discovery of the rear axle hop that would plague the Camaro for the next 3 years. We had a fleet of Camaros on the Western trip, and I had the first Super Sport, and we went down to a restaurant in LA for dinner. These were getting fairly close to production, and these may have been pilot line cars. They were good looking, they looked different, and people knew they were different, so they attracted attention. The parking lot guys took the cars, and after we came out from dinner, they were all oohing and awing over the Super Sport. I obviously wanted to make a good show upon leaving, and so I peeled out onto Sunset Boulevard. It was a manual transmission job, and we didn't have very many until then. I got into the damnedest power hop, but I didn't back out, and it was really bad. That got us busy to be working on fixing the problem, and that led to the rear staggered shocks. That's why we like road trips, because we had certain set roads and certain things we did. But sometimes when we drove around under unplanned circumstances, we would discover something. Some combinations of cornering road surfaces and limited slip differential, for example, creates a problem. We were unaware of this problem until then. Through our research, we were able to ascertain that Paul was actually driving number 37. It wasn't the very first Super Sport, but it was the first and only Super Sport convertible. Equipped with a 4-speed manual transmission, it was one of the most photographed pilot prototypes back in the summer of 1966. There were 2 off-site reliability audits, the West Coast route and the East Coast route. The West Coast route began at the General Motors Proving Grounds and ended in Los Angeles. The route consisted of driving the historical Route 66 along with the interstate highway system. The 4 cars started out with 4 drivers. It is thought that number 5 and number 37 were dropped off at LA, and those drivers returned home with their notes, driving as pairs in number 18 and number 25. Photos of these cars that were dropped off in LA can be viewed in different settings ranging from the Monterey Peninsula and Pismo Beach. The East Coast route began at the General Motors Proving Grounds and consisted of driving to General Motors Limited in Oshawa, Ontario, and then to General Motors Assembly Research, and then back to the Proving Grounds. The 4 cars started the route with 4 drivers and simulated all the required driving conditions and switched out every hour. Making note of their findings at every stop, number 34 and 46 were dropped off at Oshawa, and those drivers turned into passengers of number 13 and 43. The route then stopped at General Motors Research in Flint, Michigan, where number 43 was dropped off, and a full passenger list of 4 was in 13. The choice of these particular builds was based upon their drivetrain configuration. Of these 8 cars that were chosen by Frank Ballou, all were unique compared to the others. West Coast route, 230 3-speed convertible, 250 3-speed convertible, 327 3-speed convertible, and 350 4-speed convertible. The East Coast route, the 327 Powerglide convertible, the 230 Powerglide coupe, the 327 Powerglide coupe, and the 283 4-speed convertible. These off-site reliability audits were conducted during the middle portion of July 1966. Among notable imperfections gleaned from these audits was the necessity of the traction bars on the rear differential and the cocktail shakers for the convertibles. Also, notation should be taken for all the convertibles used for the summer route through the southwestern United States on the West Coast route.